58, public hearing in regards to the budget.
And then paper. So when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah.
I need to make notes. Say what? Did it just come in? That email? That one just came in?
What? I should see it, yes.
Mm. I didn't see that.
No? That's who we're addressing. So theirs.
All stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order on November 14, 2018 at 6:01 p.m. Can I have roll call, please?
Alderman Tyler. Here. Pecoraro.
Here.
Berube.
Here.
Braun.
Here.
Zazoka.
Here.
Also present, Mayor Arthur G. Pappas. And City Accountant Amanda Reimer.
Tonight, we are doing a public hearing on the budget that has been sent from the mayor's office to the council for review. And we are here just to hear your comments, your concerns, and your suggestions. There will be no action tonight on the budget. This is just merely a public hearing to hear your comments. And Dan, I believe the comments were, or how long are you gonna allow for?
We can keep them, we can do 5 minutes. There's a light crowd here.
So each person who has a comment will be able to speak for 5 minutes. Come up to the microphone, you state your name and address for the record. Anybody want to start?
Time is at 4.5, Dan, so I should be good.
You timed yourself?
Hey, I don't want to waste your time. So anyway, BJ Vandewater, 1098 Nash Road.
It seems unlikely that significant changes to the budget will be able to be made at this late date. So I ask all of our elected city leaders to consider the points I'm raising that cannot be applied this year for next year's budget cycle. Some of them are strategic and not tactical. Ironically, several of these points are identical to points I raised in an email with the subject "Using Technology to Save Taxpayers Money" to all the members of the City Budget Committee, including the mayor, on December 14th of last year, exactly 11 months ago. One suggestion was to do a real independent survey of the taxpayers to actually prioritize what services and to what level of service they should be offered. Were I to have been surveyed, I would have responded that the most important and most valuable service in the city is water. It's something used every day by everyone. And while both the water and the sewer fund are nearly covered by their revenues, they are not totally self-sufficient, nor does there seem to be any funds coming from that part of the budget to cover, for example, the clerks working for the treasurer that collect the payments for the bills, or as we heard last night, to help support the code enforcement department, who's enforcing the codes from the water department. I would very much prefer that the water rates be raised to make this utility self-funded, just like National Grid and National Fuel, as opposed to taxpayer subsidized. I believe this suggestion is something that can be done in this budget with some simple adjustments. For example, if the water rate was increased to $3.50 and the sewer rate to $5, 2 50-cent increases, the funds to achieve this could probably be raised. The mayor's message points out that there are no cuts in services, and to that I have to ask, why? Without the survey, understanding what services are required and to what level, it seems an opportunity for taxpayer savings is being missed. In particular, I suggested in that same email that some services could be reduced, and I used as an example having fewer trash collection days. My family moved into North Tonawanda when I was 4, and I can still remember in my teenage years having to take the trash out to the curb once a week. Well, here it is 50 years later, and trash collection is still once a week. Though I do like the wheels on the containers, it makes it a lot easier. I don't know if it could be less, perhaps every 2 weeks. Perhaps we could have 1 week of trash and 1 week of recycle. But I think this is something that probably takes some time to study, but it looks like an opportunity for taxpayer savings to me. Another area, and this is just I'm not a public sector guy, we've talked about that. But another area where I think technology could save money is within the fire department. Pretty much every home today has built-in fire detection devices and fire extinguishers, and it seems that fire is much less a problem as a result. Yet I don't see any effort to study these expenses, or even if a reduction in the expense would create a greater safety risk, because one of the mayor's key points is we have to have a safe environment. There are other areas where technology could save the taxpayers money without a reduction in service. In particular, there is an app called Digital Assistant that I mentioned in that email, and there are other apps and technologies available, and I hope all areas will be explored before the next budget is published. I would also like to take a moment and point out that property taxes must come out of a person's take-home pay. I have to have withheld first my state taxes, my federal taxes, and any other fees. Now, for me, a resident in a small home, my only monthly expense larger than property taxes is my mortgage. The 8% of my take-home pay that covers my property taxes is more than I pay for my zero-deductible health insurance from Blue Cross, more than my electric bill and gas bill combined, and even more than my DirecTV bill. I would also like to point out that I will not be getting a 2.9% increase, so at least for me, 2.9% sounds like a lot, okay? Finally, I would like to ask that the elected leaders of our city comply with the city charter and publish both the mayor's proposed budget and the accompanying budget message by 1 October of 2019. In addition to complying with the city's own guidelines, it will demonstrate our elected officials' commitment to an open government and also provide the residents and taxpayers the full 5 weeks before the election an opportunity to see the improvement the leaders are actually bringing to our fair city. Under 5 minutes, Dan? Thank you very much.
BJ, I hope you stress that take-home pay to the school district Because as you know, theirs is almost twice as much as what ours is.
Well, and actually, it's way more than mine too, but that's a different
Yeah.
matter. Okay.
City and county combined.
More than that.
Anybody else wishing to speak on any comments, suggestions on the city budget and the city budget only tonight for the public hearing? Please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Again, anybody else wishing to speak with any comments or suggestions with tonight's budget, please step forward, state your name and address for the record. Anybody else? Seeing that there's none, I'm gonna just make just a couple comments tonight regarding the budget, and BJ, we take into consideration a lot of the things you say, and also we bounce a lot of the things that people tell us, and we look for common denominators with other residents, other municipalities on what they've done and what they haven't done, what works for municipalities that do things differently and what doesn't work. So a lot of times, if you don't see something go into action, it still may be investigated, looked at, and compared and contrasted. And just to give you an idea tonight, something to chew on a little bit, you know, as far as North Tonawanda, I've been on this council for 8 years. And in 8 years, roughly, we've tried very conservatively to keep the taxes down. You know, I wish I could say that services and the cost of services never go up. That's not true for your home. It's not true for your cable, as we said before. And it's not true for the city. As we're seeing in just in recycling alone, we used to get money to pay to us for our participating in our recycling program. Now things have reversed and we have to pay roughly, I believe, Mark can verify this, about $60,000 a year to stay green and recycle our plastics and our glass and our bottles. These things here, whereas once the city was getting some money for, we're no longer. We are still complying. We want to be a green city, so we choose to do this, and we choose to find the best way to remain with our recycling program. But in comparing municipalities around us, I often compare and contrast as a council president and as your council member. And, you know, around us nearby, we talk about different water rates, we talk about different tax rates. And right now, the town of Wheatfield is raising their taxes 3.8%. I compare that as a similarity since it is so close in proximity to North Tonawanda, even though the populations can't necessarily be directly correlated. These are real things going on in real municipalities around North Tonawanda, and they compare in many ways. There's also a 3.2% tax increase for the town of Tonawanda. So I look at this tax increase of 2.9%, and being on a council that does not like to raise the taxes, we're still gonna be in our reviewing process. We wanted to hear from you, and we're not just having one hearing, but we're having 2 hearings to hear everything that people need to say, whether it be written, whether it be oral, like BJ coming up and verbally telling us what's going on, what he thinks, what his suggestions are. And they're all gonna be taken into consideration, and if any action needs to be taken, obviously we can still act on those. Niagara Falls, you know, is advertising a tax decrease. However, they also had a $12.3 million bailout. So when we look at being a sound municipality, when we look at trying to do things right, and trying to be your representatives in government, and try to make the best decisions that we can for our municipality, I feel that we will and will continue to and have represented you to the best of our ability. And we are always going to listen to what you have to say, even if it's not implemented immediately. We will still take into consideration, we will talk with our accountant, we will talk amongst ourselves, and a lot of times we investigate what other people are doing, what works and what doesn't work. So I just wanted to just close with that tonight, and just say that we appreciate you, and if you're not someone that wants to come up and speak at the microphone, you can definitely turn your written comments in to Dan. I still think you have time to do that. You can call any one of us if there's something that you wanted to bring to our attention. With that being said, anything else from anybody up here?
Well, I just want to thank those of you that took the time out to be here tonight. I just want to emphasize what we had mentioned before when I read the message for the regular council meeting. And the tax increase, people should be reminded that this still stays below the tax cap in New York State. And I looked over a 10-year period, a decade. And again, I'm going to repeat this because I think it's important. Over the past 10 years, there have been 3 years of no increase, 3 years of a decrease, and 4 years of an increase of less than 1%. So the council, over the years, has really held the line pretty much on property taxes. And again, as President Zilka just mentioned, if you compare municipalities, and of course, to really compare, you need to compare apples to apples, and you would compare similar municipalities of our own, population and type of demographics. And if you do that, you'll find that we're pretty steady and we're pretty good. And the tax increases have really been held to a minimum. And again, nobody likes tax increases. I don't like them. My family doesn't like them. My friends don't like them. But as I mentioned before, that's the system we work under. In terms of cutbacks, this city, and before I was here even, and some of the council members that have been here, been very cognizant of any departments that have too many people working, and they have been cut back. Our DPW alone was at a high of about 127, I believe, somewhere in that vicinity, 122. They're down to 67, 65, right in that, right? Am I right, Mark? That department has been cut right in half. How much more can we cut? We can't if we're going to supply the services our citizens expect. Our fire department is low at the lowest it's been. They had a high of something like 50-some, and they're down to what, 33, something like that. Police department at a high of 50, I believe it was 56 or 7 at one time, is down to 48. How much more cutting can we do? Our parks department is down to bare minimum, very bare minimum, and yet the workloads have increased, and increased due to the expectations of our people, due to the age of our city and what needs to be done. The workload has increased, and everything else has, the workers have decreased. This is true of office staff, and in all respect, BJ, we are looking into many of the things that you mentioned. We're not blowing it off. We're looking at it down the line, because as you mentioned yourself, these changes aren't something we can do immediately. And I know you acknowledge that. And I appreciate the fact that you do. However, even office staff, we're in a different type of business. People often mention that city government or any government should operate more like a business, and that's true to a point. But we have to remember the business we're in. We're in the people business. We're in the service business, and we aren't producing a product as such. When a company or the private sector produces a product, there is a number that goes with it. And if it isn't correct, or it's damaged, or isn't working, it gets a recall. In the public sector, you don't get a recall. You are working with people, you're working with emotions, you're dealing with services that people need. So there isn't a lot we can correct if a mistake is made until later. We have to things have to be done. It takes a few years to see the result. and then you have to take corrective action if you discover a mistake has been made. So it's a little bit different in the public sector. But in spite of all that, this council, I believe, and some previous administrations have worked very hard to keep our tax rate at what we hope people can afford. Can everybody afford it? Probably not. But we have to do the best we can for the overall picture. We can't pick out one or two individuals and say we're doing a tax rate for you. We have to look at the whole city. We have to look at our community with its complete demographic. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Anybody else wishing to speak on anything as we close the meeting? Can I have a motion to adjourn the budget hearing?
So moved.
I'll second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Are you still taking minutes?
What? Before you leave, it's very important,
We're done.
my comments.
We're done.
So when we announced last night, it was 6 o'clock.
The meeting was 6
You
hours.
people should hear
There's another
what
meeting
their own
tomorrow.
consultants say.
There's another meeting tomorrow. The meeting was scheduled 6 o'clock, son. 6 o'clock. And it's been
I know.
publicized and it's been said and it was announced when we were here.
Hey,
We're done.
we're here.
We're done.